With the possible second wave of coronavirus looming, there have been renewed calls for increased mail-in balloting. So in a recent Quinnipiac poll, 59% of Americans said that all voters in the United States should be allowed to cast ballots by mail in November due to the pandemic.
This is in spite of the fact that some, including the president, have voiced their opposition to increased mail-in voting. The former Secretary of Homeland Security, Tom Ridge, recently started a group called Vote Safe to increase bipartisan support for voting by mail, and he joins us now via Zoom to discuss that initiative. Great to have you, Governor. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's nice to join you this morning. Thank you. It's an important issue, and I'm happy to have this conversation with you this morning on rising.
Good
yes,
to see you, sir.
Absolutely. It's perfect timing because we're actually getting primary results in. I'm waiting for some of those mail-in ballots to come. I think one of the concerns that has come from Republicans in particular, of which you are one, though you don't share this concern, is that this would be a move that would benefit Democrats. Is there actually any evidence of that?
Absolutely none. Ironically, it's a very false claim. At the conceptual level, if you just think about an absentee ballot, it doesn't, the benefit does not go to either party. Now, the party that focuses on it, the campaign that focuses on it, the candidates that use it may gain an enormous advantage. But conceptually, the notion of absentee ballots doesn't favor one party or the other, pure and simple. Never has and never will.
So, Governor, one of the things that I think the accusation has been around ballot harvesting is that ballot harvesting is something that could be done in order to obfuscate the results or skew them in some way. Could you go into why, given your experience in running the DHS and more about why that's not an accurate concern?
Well, again, I think it is a concern that has been expressed. There's no anecdotal or historical evidence that suggests that the kind of, potential massive fraud or massive abuse has occurred or will occur in the future. And I would remind everyone that there are certain, within each state, there are certain requirements and certain checks and double checks on absentee ballots that frankly reduce the potential reduce the threat of a potential abuse of ballot harvesting. So again, the states go about it in a very meticulous and very appropriate way. And again, I think there's a false alarm associated with that concern, just as there is a false alarm about absentee ballots writ large. I mean, if you take a look at the 2016 election, the last time I checked, the president won, even though he's opposed to absentee ballots. But I would remind the president that about 25% of the Americans who voted in 2016 in the election in which he prevailed voted absentee. And I would also say to you very respectfully, in Washington, D.C., Republican incumbents and Republican challengers in both the House and Senate, I'm quite confident their campaigns will be looking to focus on expanding absentee ballot support rather than reducing it.
Mm-hmm. And Governor, I'm sure you've seen some of the president's statements, concerns, we'll say, about mail-in balloting, saying this could lead to the most fraudulent election in history, something of that nature. What do you think the impact is of those kinds of comments?
When anyone sows a seed of doubt into the legitimacy of our self-governance, that is problematic. And it's more disconcerting to me in the fact that we've been using absentee ballots since the Civil War. There's no partisan advantage inherent in absentee ballots. In light of COVID-19, we shouldn't compel people to make a choice between going to an in-person voting station or staying home. And it's also counterproductive and counterintuitive for the Republican president, who seeks to sustain his majority in the Senate and potentially gain a majority in the House, to be discouraging Republicans from supporting those candidates via absentee ballot. So it's disappointing. I think it's counterproductive. And if you take a look at the primary results, unprecedented use. And I look at Kentucky, and I really admire the Democrat governor, Republican Secretary of State, together decided that they wanted to maximize participation in their state for multiple reasons. The heart of which is it's the moment of self-governance. Twice a year, we have voters express their preferences. And I would say to you and everybody, isn't it in the country's best interest that we maximize voter participation? So that's what Vote Safe's all about. It's bipartisan. Let's make sure you have adequate number of in-person polling stations. There's been some reduction in some of the states. We got to lift that number up. And at the same time, make sure we have safe and secure absentee ballots. And you got 8,000 to 10,000 local officials, Republicans and Democrats, were very, very zealous and very clued in and tuned in to making sure that the process is run fairly and there's no partisan advantage given to any candidate in any election in any state.
Yeah, and Governor, just final question here. Where can people find out more about your organization?
There's boy, you asked me a good question. The last one, I should be able to give you a website, but I'm sure that you just Google Vote Safe and you'll find all about it. But I'm a pleasure to serve with Jennifer Granholm, the former governor of Michigan. And I would say to you and to all Americans, and this has been one of the reasons I joined the organization, was proud that they asked me to become part of it. I don't believe that voting is a privilege. I believe it's a responsibility. And I think it's a responsibility of both parties to make it easier for people to vote. I think it's a responsibility of both parties to enhance absentee ballots and then let the people decide once their preferences have been expressed. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to share these thoughts with you this morning.
Our pleasure, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Make sure you have a good day.
You do the same.
All right, next on Rising, the Tulsa rally did not really go the way the Trump campaign officials had hoped. So we're going to speak with the Director of Communications, Tim Murtaugh, about what it could mean for the future live events when Rising returns.